E-commerce Straight Talk. We're here today with Will Critcher, the Director of Ecommerce for Death Wish Coffee. Will, how was, I know it's sort of the end of summer coming to an end here, so how's it been treating you so far? Just busy?
Busy. I even got a vacation in this year, but it feels like that was a century ago. So, but yeah, very busy summer.
Nice. Yeah, I know. We've been sort of looking at like behavioral patterns and purchasing patterns and whatnot. And it's crazy to see like in the difference between January and February of this year. February you had the freeze, right? Like the whole freaking country froze, even Texas, right? And then by March, sort of the end of March, early April, if you had a vacation destination or spot, it was booked up, like all the way about 90% booked up all the way through August. Skip forward a couple months, it's booked up all the way through January now, right? So it's like even my wife and I were like, hey, maybe we go to the beach. Like, that ain't gonna happen, like it's just totally, yeah. And then August comes around, you have the Delta variant, right? You have everything going on in the world, all these other factors that sort of come into play, and it's like it's just about, obviously it's not as weird as last year, but it is sort of up there with the amount of craziness that's occurring.
Yeah. I think last year we saw the pandemic obviously had a huge impact on everything, especially consumerism. And I think this year we're seeing just like isolated examples of a year-long situation when it comes to, like you said, weather, people shifting out of being recluse to their home, people trying to go on vacation, fires. I mean, just everything.
Yeah, and there's still inventory issues. There's still logistics issues. I know everyone knows about like vehicles and computers and smartphones. That's just one aspect of it, right? There's so many problems just across the board. Just the fact that everything was shut down, especially overseas, for about 3 months, has backed things up for years, right? And I mean, we had clients that back in March, they were ordering for Q4 inventory because that's when they were going to get it, right? It's so crazy. It's just nuts. So yeah, it's been a wacky year.
It's definitely Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry, I got a little latency issue on that. Yeah, no, it's been a very wacky year. We're talking to our VP of supply chain last week, and I think off the port of Oakland, they typically see around two cargo ships outside of port that haven't docked yet around this time of year. And I think it was like a week ago they said that they were seeing it was like roughly 40. We're just sitting there because, again, you're just dealing with all this inbound that they're trying to catch up on, and then they have to have a workforce to receive all of that and then distribute it appropriately. It's just been nonstop.
Yeah. Well, and then you add in all those issues, and you add in the labor force issues. I think we've talked about it on the show here before, where it's unemployment's around that 6% mark, but the majority of it is blue collar workers, service workers. Right. It's all those jobs no one wants to do.
Yeah. And with the employment benefit getting, I think that got axed today. I think today is when that ended. Right. So we'll see what that looks like and how, or what effect that has on people getting back into the workforce.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I guess more to come for 2021, right?
Still got 4 months left, right?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Death Wish Coffee.
Yeah.
So now, how long have you been there for?
Just a little under 3 years.
Okay. And from like the initial first time, like from the time that you began there till now, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen so far? And really tell us, I guess, a little bit more about the Death Wish Coffee story.
Yeah. The changes I've seen so far.
I guess that's such a broad question, right? Like there's so many changes.
Especially with what we just talked about. Where do you begin? A little background about the company. So it was started by Mike Brown, who's the current founder and CEO of the company. Back in 2011, he used to own a small local coffee shop called Saratoga Coffee Traders. And the idea came to him when he had a bunch of customers coming in, just asking for his strongest cup of coffee or what was his strongest cup of coffee. And so he went to the internet and he Googled world's strongest coffee and nothing populated. And so he's like, oh, there's an opportunity here. So he from there just started to source out different beans and tried a few different brew methods. And then he found one that, delivered twice the caffeine content as any available cup. Then it had a very low bitter, very great flavor. And then from there, he ended up somehow, I think randomly, like Al Roker was in Saratoga and he like stopped at Saratoga Coffee Traders and he tried the coffee and he's like, wow, this is incredible. He was like, I'll get back to you or whatever. And within a week, he got a call from them saying, hey, we'd love to come and, do an interview with you, blah, 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 see your operation. And he was like, yeah, sure. When? It's like, oh, we'll be down there in a couple hours. And at the time, Death Wish coffee was formulated in the basement of a coffee shop. And so needless to say, you had the news come there and it was a pretty funny experience. And then from there, we ended up winning the Intuit Small Business competition that got us a Super Bowl commercial in the 2016 Super Bowl, which obviously then catapulted us quite a bit. So we saw a lot of very rapid growth very, very quickly. And since I've been here, a lot of it's been focusing on becoming more efficient, improving our e-commerce side of things. And then we've also, when I started, I think retail represented probably about 15 to 20% of our business. And I think, as of today, it's probably 55% of our business. So we've seen a significant growth in our retail customer base and just opportunities, especially with the release of new products such as medium roast and latte and stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah. And so for that Super Bowl commercial that you guys were in on, so you're saying that you won that through Intuit, like Intuit?
Yeah, so they essentially did a competition for small businesses where they were going to give a free 30-second spot to whichever company had the most amount of essentially likes on. It was a voting process, and so I believe it was between the final. I don't remember the third company, but it was between us and Chubby's actually. So we ended up getting the most votes for it, and then I think the commercial cost production. In the sense of production and what the actual ad spot cost, I think it was either $6 or $9 million that we got out of it. I mean, paid towards the production of it and the actual publication of it. But yeah.
No, that's crazy because I was just if you look at Super Bowl, so like you could make a commercial, like most people drop almost $1 million+ on the commercial for the Super Bowl. You buy the Super Bowl spot. That's a few million, right? Like you're saying, 6 to 9 million. But what people don't account for, because they're like, oh, I could come up with that, to reach some X amount of people. But what they don't account for is the other 20 million in ad spend that you got to pay for the whole year, right? Around that. Mm-hmm. And sort of that's sort of everything that comes along with that. Because I'm sure if it was just Super Bowl commercial, everyone would be into it. So what I'm saying is I think that's pretty cool that you guys were able to get that spot and be able to run with that. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah. I think the very first thing I did when I started here, I mean, it had to have been within the first 2 hours of me working here. I was like, I want to see what a Super Bowl commercial does to a website's traffic. And I mean, it was just like Mount Everest. Like when you could tell, like when the commercial aired, it just like our page sessions went from where they were at, and I think they like 8x'd for like 2 hours of just through the roof. But we anticipated a lot of, they anticipated, increased order volume, and the site maintained everything was good there. But we definitely got very close to having significant supply chain issues. But luckily enough, they prepared, readily in advance for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a very interesting story. So you guys essentially have been growing like gangbusters since you started, just like right out the gate.
Yeah. And, we're a single owner too. We don't have any, we have no VC money or anything like that. So it's been quite the challenge. And I think we're learning a lot of the right things and having to break a lot of bad habits in the process too, but it's been a lot of fun.
So, so what was like one of the biggest lessons that you guys learned from growing so quickly?
Oh, I would say the biggest lesson we learned would likely be it would probably come from the inventory and supply chain side. I think we ran into even though we prepared as best we could with the information we had, as it relates to making sure that we had inventory to satisfy the orders that came in. One of the areas that we didn't fully prepare for was we were anticipating a lot of Shopify orders to come through. We anticipated Amazon would see a lift, but we didn't prepare our FBA orders, so fulfilled by Amazon orders on Amazon from an inventory standpoint well enough, and we ended up getting to a point where we weren't able to deliver, and Amazon actually ended up kicking us off and suspending our account. So I think one of the biggest learning lesson from that was just can't sell product if you don't have it. So
Yeah.
we recognize the importance of bringing on the right people to not only the people but partners to make sure that we are producing our product to meet the demand, making sure that it maintains the quality and everything that we have going on with that, and then just paying more attention to our supply chain logistics side of things, business, beyond just the fact that because the company was so marketing sales focused, especially with the drastic just the incredible rise that we had so quickly. I think then that just opened the floodgates for all the supply chain obstacles and learnings we had to take into consideration.
Wow. So moreover, this past past 12 to 18 months must have been especially trying on you guys as far as logistics and supply chain.
Yeah, it was. We were good. We definitely we had the right people in place. We never came into a shortage this year, or even last year. We never went into a shortage. We did prepare well for it, but I mean, it certainly has its challenges, with Amazon just deciding to, cut inventory holdings by 50, 60, 70% across the board. So then we've got all this inventory, we don't know where to send it. And now, so it's been, last year was pretty tough, I think, but ultimately we learned a lot from it. The hard part now, I think, is, how do we compare, this year's performance to last year's performance, especially in Q1, Q2. It's almost like, we want to make sure that we're constantly growing and we're hitting our 2021 plans. But then when we compare it to specific times and against 2020, we're almost like, in some cases, like if we're barely doing better, and sometimes it's almost like, wait, is that because we're not doing well, or is that because of the environment of 2020? And so the challenging part is how much do you rely on last year's performance, specifically in certain months, in comparison to this month or into this year, especially with, again, people coming out of COVID, people focusing on entirely different things, not just making sure that they have, their coffee.
Yeah. And I mean, we've been sort of feeling the same pressure. It's how do you make predictions for, best usage of capital when what you basically you would try to go off some sort of seasonality, some sort of patterns that you've seen. The problem is that the shifting patterns, it's almost like on a weekly basis, right? It's like every week it's something entirely new. And so you're just using your best guess. It's like, okay, well, let's stay conservative, but how could we do this, right? And and others are still, trying to shoot for the moon, and it's like, well, we're just really like, shooting blindly here. But I think that's sort of what you have to do in this sort of scenario, right? It's the best analytics in the world aren't going to get you what you want. So it's you just kind of got to work with what you have. Yeah, and you mentioned like Amazon, or you guys got booted from Amazon. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Amazon. This is one of our more favorite subjects to talk about here on this show. It's obviously, I'm not a huge like Amazon has its place and it's very convenient, right? And that's normally why people use it. I would say if people had the choice, they wouldn't, right? Especially with all the the stealing that Amazon does of products and white labeling stuff as soon as they see it take off. But how are you guys able to leverage Amazon for brand growth and increased sales?
Yeah, I think if you look at the beginning aspect of it, we want to meet consumers where they are, and Amazon is certainly is inarguably the best place, best area to meet consumers, at least from an e-commerce placing our product there was important in the original get-go of it, and we have no intention on stepping away from it at this point. I think we've definitely relied on reviews and product reviews, and making sure that when we did have our supply chain shored up, making sure that Amazon had inventory, and then if we had any FBM orders, that we were making sure that all those orders were shipped out on time. And I think the fruits of that labor were our dark roast our ground. So we just came out with medium. So essentially it's like our only coffee product that we had for a period of time. Was the #1 selling ground coffee on Amazon for 5 consecutive years. And then 2019, at the end of 2019, it was the #5 best-selling grocery product, or product in all of grocery.
Wow.
The pandemic definitely is where we got our asses kicked a little bit, and had to learn quite a few things. So we're able to leverage just, I think, the exposure. I think if you kind of consider it in the same way that someone's going down a coffee aisle, I think we looked at the McKinsey & Associates and a few different studies that we've done in-house and in conjunction with Amazon. And I think it was even the most loyal of coffee consumers. I think it was 83%, at least at the time, when they go to switch or to search coffee, assuming they're not subscribed and saved, they do consider brand switching, at least at one point. So what can we do to become top of search from a brand perspective and from a product perspective, to at least make sure that they're aware of our product, and then utilize any sort of DSP and retargeting and things like that to make them aware again of our product's existence. Obviously, we get more value if they come to our .com, just because we have opportunity to upsell them. We have email opportunities and so on and so forth. But I think Amazon's been a great tool for, I think, just putting our product where users congregate, which has been Amazon.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and everyone's there. Like I was saying, even if they don't necessarily want to be there, so it's just a convenience factor. Not only that, but I mean, Amazon's so customer centric, it's insane. It's great, right? And that's sort of the world that they come from, and that's how they started. That's how they got so big. And really looking at the Amazon side, because obviously Amazon still owns that customer, and then looking at direct to consumer. How did you guys sort of, what plans did you put in place? What shifts did you guys really do to make sure that your D2C side was growing and just as strong?
Well, there was a bit of a residual effect, from the commercial and so on and so forth. We've had a pretty strong social media presence, especially around the time of when the Super Bowl commercial happened. We relied on our memes and things of that nature, and we very community to us. Community is as important as every bean that is a part of every SKU that we make, and so we try to utilize social media for how can we create two-way familiarity and develop our understanding of our audience, and vice versa first, and then drive traffic to our website second, sell a product third. And through that methodology, we've been able to really kind of develop our community itself. There actually is a community on Facebook that we're not an admin of. It's the official Deathwish Coffee community page. I think there's like 15,000 members in there that we peek our heads in there from time to time, and we'll comment and stuff like that. But we have no oversight or anything to say that's in there. So it gives us a sense of pulse. Granted, it's a bit of a micro. It's a micro community, but I think some of the success that we've seen from developing our audience and acquisition just comes from trying to be humanizing ourselves as much as possible. And Mr. Rogers said it extremely well. I think the hero of Mr. Rogers was the community of people who watched it. He didn't say, subscribe to our product now. He would say something like, why don't you be my neighbor? Why don't you join us, kind of thing. And so what we try to do is we're not trying to make our product or our brand the hero. Essentially that's the consumer. We're just trying to be the guide throughout that hero's journey. And so trying to focus on how, Deathwish Coffee supports the things that they are trying to accomplish and helps them accomplish the things that they want to do. But ultimately, it's not about our product or us. It's about the people who are the hero of that story. I think, that's a mindset that we definitely try to focus in on. And a lot of our decisions that we make here internally, like we try to reinforce that, always thinking with the customer in the room, especially if a decision impacts the customer experience. Actually, we just made these placards. We don't have them yet, but it's those little nameplates that you put like on your desk, and instead of it being like a person's name, it just says, will this impact the customer experience? If yes, talk to somebody. If no, are you sure? Like, and so we put that, like, everybody's going to have one, just because every decision we make, I mean, not every, but I mean, it's funny how innocuous and small a decision might seem to be, but we've been able to track significant like confusion to our customer just by doing very simple things that you would think would have no impact. And so we just really try to think about how are the decisions we make, how are we communicating with our customers, and how does that impact the relationship between ourselves and the brand and our customers.
Well, and it being 2021, and I think we've seen this in the past. We've just community is everything, right? Mm-hmm. Building community, building some brand loyalty, all of that. So being customer centric is so important. I think prior to the pandemic, we've just been able to sort of rely on the Facebook algorithm, or Instagram, or all these platforms really do it for us, and we could get away with not totally being 100% or doing the best job possible, right? I think over the past 12 to 18 months, that has proven that you have to be on your A game, right? So community is so important, brand is so important. It's one of those things that it just takes time to build, and you have to build it, and you have to do it, because that's really the only way you'll survive like times that we've been going through. And go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, especially when you think, we talked about this a little earlier than last year, but we'll say like around July of last year, thinking about, if the average consumer, we'll just say like middle class America, when you're going to a grocery store May or July of last year, you're likely dealing with people who are employees there who maybe don't feel comfortable, don't want to be there. They're just as frustrated as you are, and so it just opens the door for we'll say less than what you would like to receive in a customer service perspective. And so from us, like, we have a very high NPS score. I think we're at like a 92. Our customer service team is exceptional, and I think so we should make sure that to ensure that we're delivering the same service but better, because I think what that affords our business as a whole, and I think anybody really, especially, and it rings true now, is if you rely on that customer service experience to be exceptional, then every type of interaction, like for instance, again, you go to the grocery store and there's just a bummed out cashier or something to that effect, like they're going to remember that super high note, and I think so. What can we do to kind of stand out to make sure that we're we understand that the customer is the most important part of our business. So what can we do to make sure that they know that and that there's never any question that they're just another ticket per se.
Yeah, and I think that message can get lost too, especially if you're a smaller company dealing with just the daily grind, especially with social media the way it is, right? Yeah, and obviously it depends what platform you're on. If you're on TikTok, and hopefully people are positive, but if you're on Twitter's can turn into a cesspool of negativity real quick. And it's interesting because I feel like, because what's been happening over the past 12 to 18 months is there's been a lot of growth for e-commerce, right? Amazon has taken a huge chunk of that market, and a lot of small businesses that didn't really go Ecomm sort of started to fade away, especially mom and pops and your brick and mortar. And so this is what I mean by like how important community is to sort of help keep you alive. Like, how big is your tribe? Like Seth Godin would say, like, you need 1,000 people in your tribe at least. And if you have that, then you can pretty much survive anything. And that led me down the path to, like, I'm curious to know if there are any businesses out there that you don't need to interact with humans, right? Where you don't need to interact with people at all. And there really isn't, right? Outside of maybe government. But so there's no business in the private sector where community doesn't matter. So it matters everywhere, and I think it's so huge. And I think if we look at brands today, that are implementing customer centricity, customer service as a number one priority, building community. Those are going to be the brands that survive over the next 3 to 4 years, depending on what happens. Obviously, everyone's positive, but at the same time, like it's from what we saw last year and even into this year, anything can happen on any given day of any given month. So it's just about being able to continuing to reach out and touch those people and really build that. Now, you talked a little bit about social media. So you guys absolutely crush it out there on social. And sort of how has that grown and or changed since you started?
Yeah, there's one thing I want to touch on that you just brought up too with WebSmith mentioned this a while back. I just lost my train of thought. As it relates to community. So WebSmith, the guy is a guru, is somebody I read. He owns 2PML. It's a phenomenal newsletter, and I recommend everybody to read and watch and pay attention to what he has to say. But he made a point. I'm not sure if it was on 2PML or if it was in a podcast, but he had mentioned how if you walk down the street and you see somebody wearing a Nike t-shirt, it's outside of very rare cases, it's for a fact it's Adidas nothing. Like they're wearing nothing other than Adidas, and that doesn't come from just great branding. That comes from a sense of community. And I think that rings true with, like, if they're wearing Nike shoes. It's almost kind of funny. I was talking to our senior marketing director here about this specifically, and she had made a comment that she was like, yeah, I was putting my son in the car and he had, or I was getting ready to leave for the car and he had a Nike t-shirt on, and I was putting on his Adidas shoes, and I was laughing at, like, she was like, oh, like, she's like, it felt kind of wrong, like putting Adidas shoes on there. And I think like it's so true due to the fact that the tribe, as Seth Godin said, and how important community is, and done through effective community building and brand development. To your question, social media side. So, we're I was like somewhere around like employee 28, 25, 29, somewhere in there. And the marketing team consisted of 4 people, I think. And then since then, our marketing team is now 23 people. We have our social media team is as big as our previous marketing team as a whole. And I think, it's an area that we're starting to recognize too, is it's done very well for us historically in the past, but we need to be more aggressive with how we face it, in the sense of being more courageous, more willing to fail, just trying different things and recognizing that, what worked for us in 2016 and 2019 is not at all, likely going to be relevant in 2021 and looking forward. So identifying what organic channels, we haven't really played around in as much as we should. That would be, TikTok. I think LinkedIn is a phenomenal organic channel, especially from our perspective, and just in the sense of what actually, I'll tell you, we're kind of like doing this test per se. So I think I have like 2,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is pretty decent. It's like, it is what it is, right? But a coworker of ours, she's our community manager. She, on her first day, she took a picture of somewhere in the office, and it has like a meme that we have throughout our office, like in our offices and like in our common areas. And it was like, today's my first day. And she was like, yeah, I usually get like, 40 or 50 likes, and this specific post got like 500 likes. And I was like, that's a lot. And so I took her idea and I took another picture of next to our kitchen with a meme, and I just put, morning in there. And I think the biggest post of engagement I've ever had was like 80 on LinkedIn. And I took the same process. I just took a picture of the meme in the kitchen. I just said good morning, and I think it's at like 305 likes. And so it's like, okay, like, if I have 2,000 followers, I think she has about that. Our business page has like 10,000. I was like, again, business content, obviously, like we have the venue for that, right? We have a really cool office. We have very cool people that work here. It doesn't need the content doesn't need to be what you see and like what you're used to. It could be entirely different in a sense of engagement, and create that kind of office community, or that LinkedIn community through memes. So it's funny how we're testing out to see, what it is that resides in LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's a very viable channel. And that could skip to the other part where I personally know somebody who's an attorney. He was originally attorney for, I think, real estate law. And then he ended up leaving that firm, and he works for pharmaceutical law. And so he was going to some conference about, how to market yourself. And he was looking at Instagram, so on and so forth, and heard of TikTok. And again, this was somebody who has utterly no social media background. And he ended up deciding to use TikTok. And he's, again, a pharmaceutical attorney. And he has, I think, like 3.7 million followers on TikTok. And he said that 50%, he's like roughly 50% of all the DMs that I receive on a daily are specific to services for some type of use, to employ him. And he was like, a lot of it I can't use. But the point is the fact that if a pharmaceutical attorney, we're talking, like, from my perspective, like the most boring job ever, that makes no sense, in the sense of, if you think of TikTok as being a place for kids, that's statistically not true. If a pharmaceutical attorney can do it, then I'm confident your brand, who sells wallets or crochet or sells cars, can absolutely do it. You just need to think outside of the box and understand that, content and the emotion related to that content is ephemeral. And instead of trying to make everything picture perfect and publish it, I think just do. And yeah, that's my thought when it comes to social. And that's our thought here too.
I think that's the trick, though. That's it's like with TikTok in particular, it's not necessarily about overall quality. Obviously, you want quality better than a 2011 smartphone, right? But the quality of your content is really what it's about. Like, what's in the meat of what you're giving people, and that's what they want. And that's what drives engagement and clicks. And obviously, looking at TikTok's algorithm is a little different, right? Where Facebook and Instagram and even LinkedIn, you're used to, like, the more engagement you get is driving up impressions and more engagement. Well, with TikTok, how it works is they serve, like, say you publish something, they serve that post to a select group of people, and based on those percentages is determined how it's going to show it to more people, right? So it's very interesting in how they've sort of rewritten the script. But when you talk about LinkedIn too, I just sort of had this thought. It's so fascinating to me that you have platforms like TikTok and Snapchat that require video, that require you to give some effort, right? And to sort of think outside the box and talk about, actionable items that people can use today or do today or experience, right? Sort of have that tell a story, something along those lines. And then you look at LinkedIn and even like Facebook communities and Facebook groups, and it's sort of the opposite. You need to write texts, right? It's all about text. So what can you write? What can you tell in a story in there? Like, obviously video does do well on LinkedIn too, and some places within Facebook, but it's if you're actually talking to the heart of the customer and, like, wanting to have a conversation, just what's the polarity there and its platforms and how they're different. Now, you can use the same type of content. This is what I would tell people. I would just say, at the beginning of the week, write up whatever content you have, like, even if it's a blog post or whatever, you can dice that up into edible bites for LinkedIn, and then just take that same content and then dice that up into 30 to 60 second long videos for TikTok. And now you see what people are doing too is they're creating content for TikTok, and now you have Instagram Reels and Facebook Stories and all this, and then they're serving it there too. And now LinkedIn has LinkedIn Stories, so I'm curious to see how that'll do. But stories came from, because they're trying to copy Snapchat. Reels came from trying to take from what they can from TikTok. But at the same time, you see TikTok just blowing up, and I think that has to do with more loyalty too, right? I wouldn't be surprised, and you can sort of mark my words here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Instagram turns into MySpace within the next 2 to 3 years, right? And sort of Facebook will still be around, but it'll be your older audiences, I think, that will mainly be on there. LinkedIn, that's a powerhouse, and the problem is actually who owns it? Microsoft.
Microsoft. Yep.
Yeah. The
I
problem
lost a
is
bet on that too. I thought we had an internal wage before they did it, and I was like, I feel like Apple's going to do it. I was like, who's the powerhouse that's not involved right now? And I was like, Apple. I was like, either that or they're going to buy TikTok, but that's that point.
Yeah, I know. God, yeah, it's actually sad because so we've used LinkedIn's ad platform.
Mhm.
And you have some success sometimes, right? But not a lot. But you don't get like like if you just go in there, you start an ad account, you start going, you get a certain amount of data and a certain amount of access within your ad account. You really don't get to the like meat and potatoes of it all until after you start spending about 25K per month. Then LinkedIn opens it up more for you, so that you can dive into the more narrowed targeting and things like that. So it's very interesting how they have it set up. That said, too, what we're seeing is we're having a little success with some brands on TikTok, but when you see like what is the driver of that success, it is pure creativity, right?
Mhm.
It's like, how creative can you be with your videos? Because obviously you need videos, so the barrier to entry increases right there. Then it's like, how can you be more creative? How can you engage people as they're flipping through, right? And sort of you're not trying to be super disruptive, right? Like this word that everyone's been using for the past 4 years, like be disruptive. Like you're not really trying to be. You're trying to be relevant. You're trying to fit within the context of what they're seeing too, right? That's how you're trying to engage with people.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, there's no correlation between high quality content and high performing converting paid social ads. Like parking lot shots is a term that came from the fact that you could take a $400 picture of something here, and then you can go in the parking lot and take a picture with it of your phone and have it oftentimes for whatever reason perform better. And so I think, like, to your point, where it comes from, you know uh, like people want to return for their attention on social. Now, even granted, the objective of a paid ad is not the same thing as an organic post. So, what can you do from a creative standpoint to convince them in a very short period of time to do the thing that you would want them to do? And so I think, if you can capture their attention by being creative and being relevant, and then very clearly say, hey, we're looking for your business, click here to buy this product. I think, that's something that it's almost like Facebook, we'll just say Facebook, Instagram, the audiences are always right? Like it's always going to put the ad in front of the person it should be, provided you've done your due diligence. Facebook's always going to do that. So you can't really, you can optimize the audience a little bit, you could take some learnings, but ultimately the thing that impacts like that's going to really have any sort of lift or performance indicator or change performance is going to be that creative. But it's the copy and the actual creative inside of it. And I think whatever you can do to constantly provide, relevant, attention capturing content that effectively tells the consumer, the audience, to do the thing they want to do. I think that's what should be scaled and focused on, rather than even just spending more money on the paid ad side. I think you spend more money or attention on making sure you have just a high funnel or a farm of just content that you can constantly keep putting in there and testing against itself across different channels to see what works. Because something might do okay on Instagram, but it might crush it on TikTok. We're seeing the other way around, where things that did really well on Instagram from a video perspective just do subpar on TikTok. And so, vice versa, where TikTok content does really great cross-posted, and same with Twitter, Twitter content cross-posting on Instagram does really well for us too. But yeah, a little bit of a rant there.
No, it's good. Yeah, there's such a giant mix too. Like so much so here this year, I feel like if you were to talk to me 2 years ago, 2019, I would have said I could have come up with a broad strategy that really would have worked for just about everyone, and then you'd have like your little tweaks here and there. Now it's like every brand is exceptionally different, right? Everything that we do for that brand has to be so different if we want success. To where there's no clear, concise strategy that is like a cookie cutter thing that will work for everyone. And I think that's just due to the total level of platform usage and how people are using and working with these platforms. And then also the content creators, so you have influencers, how they're using the platforms, and then how brands are using the platform. So, and we've tried this, and, brands acting like influencers doesn't necessarily work. And so, it's you just have to try so many different things. And to your point, you could post a meme or a video and it does extremely well. And you're like, cool, I'm going to run this as an ad. Doesn't do anything. Vice versa.
Totally different. Yeah.
You could post, like, for example, we work with a electronics company, literally just posted a picture of a turntable on a nightstand, right? That's the highest driver of revenue. That simple image, just a turntable on a nightstand, like that's it, right? That said, if we're looking at, hey, if we want to really be successful, and the priorities of success, and I've said this on here so many times, is product, market, creative. So do you have a product the market actually wants? Okay, cool. Who is that market? Who's that audience? All right, cool. You can hit those two things. Just about every platform these days, like you said, as long as you're doing your due diligence, you can hit those two things. And then creative comes into play. And I feel like, especially over the past 4 or 5 years, where the targeting has been so on point, and you've been able to get away with, a few things here and there, and you haven't really focused on creative, you've done just enough. I think that time has shifted, right? It's like you definitely have to be on par with your creative. Now, what that means is something totally different. You got to test to figure out what that is. But in general, like you're saying, you build these high functioning funnels. Creative needs to tell the story. So you have a product and you have a market, but does the market know about the product, know about the brand, understand how to use it? All of these things, just, has your brand built that authority?
Are you there?
Oh, can you hear me?
There you are. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, just got a little.
No worries.
No. You're entirely right though. It's like, now that we have the product and we know we have the market, and we have data to support that there's a viable match here. How do you connect and educate and how do you connect and educate the two things so that way you can see the fruits of the labor and actualize that business opportunity that you see. Seth Godin again, he said something in a podcast I thought was extremely relevant, especially now. I think he said about a year ago, is related to direct advertising, and direct advertising is starting to as we're seeing higher acquisition costs and CPM costs and things like that, because you've got these big box legacy retailers getting way more vested into, especially after last year, into the digital space, where direct advertising is, it's not becoming, it's not going away. I'm going to pay $1 for this ad to be delivered here. Let's say that this consumer is going to give us $1.01. Cool, we made a penny. I think those margins, obviously not that bad, but they're starting to get, shrink down. And so, the point of this is that, it's not just the direct advertising. What can you do from a context and a creative standpoint that's really going to shift, I say shift the performance or shift the penetration that you have or the awareness that you have in any given market. And he used, I don't remember the lady's name, but he used Pfizer as an example for when they had Alka-Seltzer. And so I can't remember the lady's name, but she was tasked with, hey, as the marketing director, we need you to, by the end of this year, double the sales of our Alka-Seltzer. And so she was like, cool, thought about it. And she's like, oh, wait, here we go. How about plop, fizz. So instead of it being one product, I'm going to create a little jing that we're going to then put into advertising. And instead of using one, we're just going to tell them to use two, because we also, for whatever reason, they did their backup and research to make sure that it made sense. And then had a year to do it. I think within 4 months, she had doubled the prior year sales just from changing the creative and how people utilize their product and how people view their product. And so that didn't come from direct advertising. And so I think, there's a lot of opportunities, ourselves included, with how can we think, and we can't get people to necessarily drink coffee faster, especially we're the world's strongest coffee. So there's a caffeine tolerance and a responsibility that we have, but ultimately, how people, how do people interact and utilize, how does our product, interact with their daily lives, and what ways can we harness that opportunity or harness that relationship to either scale it to more people, or get them to consume it more, which again is not a direction that we necessarily want them to go, but it's solved not through direct advertising. It's solved through what you're talking about, is the creative side of things and the context and how people, not only say how people use our product, but how our product is a part of their lives.
Yeah, and it's the entirety of the ecosystem, right? I don't think we can, it's kind of sad, but if you're a small business or you're a startup just starting out, you can't just choose one channel and try to scale through that channel. It's like you sort of have to build up the entire ecosystem from scratch to begin with, right? It's very difficult. If it was 2016, it'd be easy because you just say, hey, hop on Facebook, that's all you need. You scale that to high heaven, right? And then you can start adding everything else. That's not the way it works anymore. Everything's sort of omni-channel, and that's how people operate. And so to be able to look at that, especially with the shifts that we are making internally here, it's all about, and it's kind of gotten to a crazy, ludicrous point almost, where it's like content creation to the max, right? And that's how we help our brands. It's like, obviously the paid side still works to a certain extent, especially with the iOS issues. Like, oh, that's, all you're dealing with is attribution issues, right? People are still buying. And this is the crazy thing that we've been seeing is we've been seeing brands and advertisers shift funds and budget over to traditional and TV, radio, print, direct mail, right? Like that wasn't working 6 months ago, but because you can't see the numbers, because there's an attribution issue, therefore this must not still be working. When we actually look at the back end, right? We look at our MER, we break down total returns, we see that, hey, it's still working. There's just a gap in the data that we can't see. So what do we sort of do to help push everything along? And not only that, but how can we help increase our reach to the market, not only through paid, but through organic? And what we learned through looking at all the data and looking at brands and talking to brands who had some major success with organic is it's just all about massive content creation. How can you just be creating and creating and creating? And all that, at some point you might say, well, that just costs a lot of money. Well, not necessarily. It just costs a lot of influencers, right? And content creators. And so really looking at that route, especially moving into Q4, have you guys had any success with influencer marketing or working with content creators?
Yeah, so it's a good question because we're looking at it from a little bit of a different approach going into Q4. So not to say influencer marketing doesn't work, because it certainly does. I think it definitely has its impact, its viability. But one thing that, going back to a conversation earlier about, instead of throwing more money at increasing our ad budgets on paid social, looked at what can we change and what can we scale, and then what is a pain point for us. And so if you're an influencer, right, we'll just say if you're an influencer of, we'll say the gaming market, let's just, for simple numbers, let's say there's one influencer for the gaming market. To be the aggregate spokesperson of all of these people, per se, like to be an influencer, what do you have to be very good at? Proven. You have to be very good at creating content. And so rather than finding influencers to influence their market, what we're looking at is acquiring various amount of different agreements with influencers to create content. If they want to publish it onto their social media, that's fine. That's not what we're paying them for. We're paying for them to create content as to how they interact with our product, how it interacts with them, what they think of it, and then using that creative and then sparsing it up over different paid channels, opportunities. And so, we're trying to look at it from a bit of a different approach rather than just hiring a content creator, someone who just shoots video for brands or shoots videos for influencers or lifestyle photography, but someone who is a spokesperson of a segment of an audience that we have validated through various terms of data. And then, try to get like influencers and then how they interact with our product. Then we take all of that content and then test it against itself in, on paid channels such as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And then we'll do the same thing with like home chefs and so on and so forth, that they then post it to their audience, which oftentimes they've shown that they would, just because if that's part of their function, is they want to let their audience know that what they're doing and what they're working on, then that's just extra. But utilizing them as a professional content creator first, and then if they decide to post on their social media for influence, like that's just bonus. But that's how we're looking at it from a Q4 perspective.
I think you just hit the nail on the head for how we shifted to things too, right? It was this idea of, if we look at influencers as like, hey, are they cash flow positive out the gate? Are they ROI positive? It could take us a very long time, and we would go through a lot of influencers and a lot of cash to try to find that, right? And then how can you scale it? It's scalability is very difficult within that. But by doing it that way. So what we did is we shifted our whole mindset, and we said, okay, we have a budget for content. why isn't our first priority like how much content can we get for X amount of dollars? So then we shifted to that. And so instead, looking at influencers more as content creators, right, than influencers. And so then that changed how we negotiated with them too, right? For like total, hey, how many images we're looking for, how many videos we're looking for, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, all this. And how can can you get it to us within the next 2 weeks? And right. And not only that, but then you go from someone, an influencer asking for $1,000 to post something to, hey, you know what? Okay, for $400, I'll give you 20 images and 3 videos. Boom, done. Like, I'll take that deal any day, right? And so just go ahead.
Oh, sorry, little service issue there again. Oh, we're good. I couldn't tell if yeah, sorry about that. To echo your point, I mean, I think that's a big piece of it too. I mean, if you had $50,000 and you put it towards a commercial, right, like towards one high quality commercial, I'm not saying that that's not warranted and not valuable, especially if you're going to do connected TV and you're going to spend another 50 grand over the year advertising it, right? Like that does have its value, right? Especially from a brand, like just an all encompassing commercial, but that's not very scalable when it comes into a Q4 perspective. Imagine taking that 50 grand and putting it towards, I don't know, 200 unique pieces of content, especially if that content is coming from proven professional content creators who are the aggregate brand ambassador for these segments of people, and you're just constantly testing yourself. That's very scalable. It's very testable. It's very, it's just, and then what else does that do? That then frees up your creative team's, pipeline and bottlenecking that they may have, or if you don't have the in-house ability to create that content. I think it just it's a much, I want to say, I think now I want to say it's a much better use of funds. However, we're also trying that out right now. So I don't want to speak out of touch, but like the math checks out, right? I mean, like if you have more opportunities to test against itself, put it on scalable, testable channels rather than just spending more money in paid ads, or like in the campaign groups themselves, the ad groups themselves, just using this high. I say like, yeah, it's a higher quality content, but it's done by people who speak directly to the market and the audiences that you're already accurately targeting through these channels.
Yeah, and over time you get better at your ability to sort of communicate to them what's working and what isn't, what we want to see, what we don't, and especially if you can build some good relationships with these people, because some of them are awesome, others very difficult to work with, but I mean that's sort of the nature of influencers or content creators. But yeah, it works really well. I don't know if everyone heard this big crash, but it was just my cat knocking over a ton of books. But anyways, hey, so Will, I know we're sort of pushing on time here. I wanted to thank you for coming out and chatting with us today. How can people reach you?
LinkedIn. I'm a loser. I don't really use social media that much. LinkedIn's the best way. Always open to conversation, especially as it relates to anything we talked about from a content creation standpoint. But yeah, LinkedIn at my name, Will Critcher, or find us at Deathwish. Use code Will15 at our website to save 15% off an order. What other shameless plug can I put in here? I think that's it, actually.
Whatever plugs you want. Cool, man. All right. Well, everyone.
Well,
thanks again, Will, and everyone. Be sure to check us out on Spotify. Follow us there. We're also on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and this video will be up on YouTube as well. So be sure to subscribe and stay up to date with everything that we come out with. All right, guys. Talk to y'all later.
Thanks for the conversation, man.